Good evening. Welcome to Northbeat. I'm Megan Roberts. We begin in Iqaluit, where people are digging out after a blizzard blasted the city. The storm struck yesterday with raging winds and lots of snow. Now, Iqaluit is buried, and everyone is trudging through the aftermath. TJ Deere has the story.
This was the scene yesterday in Iqaluit. Wind gusts up to 117 kilometers an hour and about 15 centimeters of snow fell throughout the day and overnight. All buildings were closed and the city asked people to stay at home. All of the city's services were suspended. Today was all about cleanup. Snowplows were out at 4 a.m. to clear the roads, but government buildings remained closed throughout the day. Nunavut MP Lori Idlout believes it's one of the bigger blizzards that have hit the city.
Seeing the videos, I am quite impressed with all the snow that blew on the roads and the front doors of people's houses.
The storm caused the Iqaluit North Mart to flood. The store said they would be open until 10 p.m. tonight. According to Terry Lang, a meteorologist with Environment Canada, the storm began in Alberta before heading east to Quebec and heading north through Nunavik. But for some communities, blizzard warnings remain in effect.
But those should be easing today. So it's been a couple really impactful days across Nunavik and in Nunavut as well.
Both Lang and Idlout are asking people to take extra care and remain home if possible. Idlout says in these conditions, the worst can happen.
I'm still actually devastated when Akviat had its storm, and unfortunately there had been a death last year. A young man had gone out into the storm, so I just hope that people take extra care and remain home during blizzards.
The city says cleanup crews have cleared the main streets. Services remain suspended for tonight, but water delivery will resume tomorrow. TJ Deere, CBC News, Iqaluit.
The Yukon Hospital Corporation and some of its unionized employees have reached a tentative agreement. The deal comes just days after members voted overwhelmingly in favor of striking. Rafsan Farouk-Jugal has the latest.
The Yukon Hospital Corporation and the unions representing over 300 workers have reached a tentative deal. The Yukon Employees Union and Public Service Alliance Canada made the announcement earlier today. The news comes after members voted in favor for a strike mandate earlier this week. Justin Lemfers is the president of the Yukon Employees Union. He says union members will decide what's next.
Well, at this point, the details of the deal would be under seal until the ratification vote happens. So what I can say is that the bargaining team is 100% behind this deal. They think it's a strong deal, and they're looking forward to talking with membership and disclosing those details. But that has to go through the ratification process and meetings that will be scheduled to happen as soon as possible.
YEU and PSAC workers at the Yukon Hospital Corporation have been without a collective agreement since September of 2022. A spokesperson for the Yukon Hospital Corporation has confirmed that a deal is on the table. Members are expected to vote on this deal in the coming weeks. Rafsan Farouk-Jugal, CBC News, Whitehorse.
A former director with the Northwest Territories government has a suggestion for how to reduce reliance on agency nurses. He says the government needs to be flexible with what it can offer to nurses who live and work here. Luke Carroll has that story.
Scott Robertson is a registered nurse, health consultant, and health economist. He says the territory has always relied on temporary staffing, but this was typically in the form of locums. They come on short-term contracts and work for the health authority under the same collective agreement and pay scale.
We don't always need certain people here full-time. Like there are certain specialists that come here to visit where there's just not enough volume for them to be here full-time, but we need them to come here on a short-term basis. So it's the reality of our healthcare system in the north. And without those temporary staff members, we would continue to see more closures and more reductions in services.
Agency nurses are contracted by the government. They work for private organizations and are paid significantly more than staff nurses and locums. The territory also has to pay their accommodations and per diems. They cost the government $5.2 million last year. Robertson himself worked as an agency nurse about 20 years ago in Nunavut. He says at the time the pay wasn't much better than being a community nurse, but it gave him flexibility, something he says the territory needs to offer nurses that work in the NWT.
We want to be able to have a sustainable healthcare system. Agency nurses aren't ideal, but if we want to be competitive with agencies, then we need to start looking at what are they giving people that make them want to work for them versus work for us directly.
Robertson says he expects the issues with healthcare shortages to get worse before they get better. Lisa Semler, the health minister, says the department is offering various bonuses to staff nurses, including paying for their family members to come visit. And she hopes the perks will attract more nurses to come and work for the territory. Luke Carroll, CBC News, Yellowknife.
There's a move to make sure Nunavut get escorts for medical travel. The cost will be covered by the Nunavut Regional Corporation if people qualify. The CBC's Des Loreen has more.
The Nunavut Regional Corporation announced this week that beneficiaries can apply to have their escort paid by IRC. Courtney Kivik of Tuktoyaktuk says this is great news because of her horrifying experience. She says medical travel denied her an escort in 2021 and that she was placed in a hotel in Yellowknife. There, she fell asleep alone in her room after having her wisdom teeth removed.
My mouth was full of blood. My whole entire bed was pretty much full of blood. I woke up in a panic and I ran downstairs to the front desk because I didn't know what to do. I was so scared and I couldn't even talk because my mouth was so full and bloody, and I was very upset. I was even crying. I was calling all my family members. And
Kivik says it would have been easier with someone to watch her.
I feel like the healthcare system here has to be involved a lot in here. They should be willing to help us and willing to give us an escort, because when we travel and we're alone, we need that support.
The IRC says the assistance isn't guaranteed, but they're going to be reviewing each application carefully. Attempts to get a comment from IRC went unanswered. Des Loreen, CBC News, Yellowknife.
A man who murdered a Hay River RCMP officer 16 and a half years ago is applying for early release. Emra Bulachi is serving his life sentence for first-degree murder in an Alberta prison. He was sentenced to no parole eligibility for 25 years, but is applying for release under a so-called faint hope clause. The CBC's Richard Gleason explains.
Bulachi shot and killed Constable Christopher Warden on October 6, 2007. At the time, Bulachi was a 23-year-old cocaine dealer. He's now a 39-year-old inmate at the Grand Cache Institution. He's applying to be released on probation now instead of having to serve the full 25 years in prison he was sentenced to. The faint hope clause allowed people with sentences that included 25 years of parole ineligibility to apply for release after serving 15 years. The clause has since been repealed. Bulachi has one of the highest profile lawyers in Canada, Brian Greenspan, representing him. Before his application can be considered by a jury, Bulachi must first convince NWT Supreme Court Chief Justice Shannon Smallwood that it has merit. That's the stage it's at right now. Bulachi has submitted letters of support from prison chaplains, elders, and relatives who say he's reformed. He's also submitted assessments that show he's made progress while in prison. Richard Gleason, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Tributes continue to come in after the death of Brian Mulroney, Canada's 18th Prime Minister. Conservative leader Pierre Poilievre described Mulroney as, quote, a brilliant conversationalist and a wonderful storyteller. NDP leader Jagmeet Singh praised Mulroney for making Quebecers feel like they belonged in Canada. And Prime Minister Justin Trudeau called him an extraordinary statesman.
There are many, many people across the country tonight who are reeling and feeling a deep absence. He was committed to this country, loved it with all his heart, and served it for many, many years in many different ways.
During his 9 years as Prime Minister, Mulroney ushered in the 1988 Canada-US Free Trade Agreement and introduced the GST. He was also a champion for the environment and an outspoken critic of apartheid in South Africa. Mulroney was known for forging close ties with political leaders across Canada and in the United States. The flag atop the Peace Tower is now flying at half-mast. He was 84. Tributes for Mulrooney are also pouring in from around the north. As Jenna Delavich reports, his legacy here is complicated.
Kovia Suktunga Tiki Gama Nuna Vutmut.
Brian Mulrooney was no stranger to the north. In 1993, he visited what is now Nunavut during the signing of the land claim agreement.
I would say that that was his greatest contribution to the north. The fact that we could look forward to governing ourselves here, all the people of the north, in the same way that people in southern Canada do.
Dave Nickerson was the NWT's Progressive Conservative Member of Parliament while Mulrooney was in office. He remembers him as a Prime Minister who saw the North as an integral part of Canada, and a great guy to work with. Not everyone remembers him so fondly.
Because Canada didn't know how to deal with us. They still don't know how to deal with us.
Former Dene National Chief Bill Erasmus remembers him differently. He says Mulrooney's government was too set on trying to assert its authority in the North.
Yeah, tough to think good things of him, but I mean, you don't want to think ill of the dead, and that's part of the learning process. This whole thing with our treaty and Aboriginal rights is a lifetime experience. It's not going to happen overnight.
Another MP who worked with Mulrooney sees both sides. Ethel Blondin Andrew was the Territorial's Liberal Member of Parliament for Mulrooney's second term as Prime Minister.
We had a happy meeting ground. We agreed on health care. We agreed on international issues. We agreed on many things. I mean, there's stuff we didn't agree on, but you don't have to agree with people to respect them and to honor them.
Blondin also remembers him as a kind, caring, family-oriented man. A state funeral will be held for Mulrooney. Details will be announced. Jenna Delavich, CBC News, Yellowknife.
Yukon Premier Ranj Pillay also paid tribute to Mulrooney in a statement. He said Mulrooney was a great leader who helped make Canada what it is today. We'll be right back.
When my grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, first arrived in Hollywood, it was a place of dreams. But my grandfather clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party? Stand away from the stand!
I'm Una Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles. It's about a war of ideas that tore apart friendships, ended careers, and affected families like mine.
Hollywood Exiles, available now on CBC Listen or wherever you get your podcasts.
Does public transit really need more police officers? And so this is it.
Welcome to the Greenbelt.
It is now believed that Titan was destroyed. It makes sense that they get a larger share, or does it?
All of this, just single detached homes.
Yes.
What do we know? How is that even possible? Well, with a little bit of help, I think we can explain it.
About that with Andrew Chang. Watch free on CBC Gem.
We carry a world of information in our pockets because we want to know. Breaking news that shapes your world.
All right.
Reporting from the scene onto your screens.
It goes on like this, and on and on and on and on.
It's news you can trust, delivered when you want, where you want. On Canada's News app. Download the free CBC News app.
Bad hair days. We all have them.
Even as scientists, I think I know my place. It's not making art. What? This is a whale? That's incredible.
I'm piloting a boat in the fjords of Norway. I love this job.
You never listen to me.
You never think things through.
Your honeymoon phase is officially over. We never had a honeymoon phase.
You really gonna make me say it?
Oh, yeah.
Fine. I need you, Max.
So much drama. I love it. You ever get tired of that? Still get tired of that.
We are 1 week out from the start of the 2024 Arctic Winter Games in Alaska. Tonight, Team Yukon is amping up. It's holding a pep rally in Whitehorse, and everyone there is pumped about the AWG, including Virginie Ann. She'll be covering the games for us in Alaska. She is live at Shipyards Park for the rally. Virginie, what's it like there right now?
Oh, Megan, I wish I could show you how everyone was excited only a few minutes ago when the rally started and we had some speeches. But the reality is that the temperatures just dropped massively and it is very, very cold. So everybody scattered right after the end of the speeches, heading home or heading inside. I don't know if you can see behind me, there are a few people left. They're getting warm with hot chocolates and biscuits. But before that, like you just said, we are a few days before the Arctic Winter Games. Before we get there, there was this tradition that needed to be honored, and this was the kickoff that happened right here at Shipyards Park in Whitehorse. There was about a few hundred people, mostly Team Yukon athletes, the coaches, supporters. They were all here to make sure that the games were being honored and that they were ready to start the week that's ahead of them. We heard some speeches from Minister of Community Services Richard Moisten, as well as Yukon MP Brendan Henley. They both said how proud they are of the youth that's representing the Yukon. And we can recall that the Yukon has been sending their youth since 1970. In total, we're talking about 2,000 delegates from across the circumpolar north competing in 20 sports. There was also the announcement of the Yukon flag bearer. She is Leah McLean. She's 16 years old. She's a multi-sport athlete. I got the chance to speak with her mother right after the announcement. Her mom was super excited. She was very surprised. They didn't hear about anything up until now. Leah was not there, unfortunately, to accept the flag, so all of her teammates from her sport, which is wrestling, got up and accepted the flag for her instead. Her mother told me that it will be very emotional during the opening ceremony. There'll definitely be some tears. So the opening ceremony is happening March 10th. We will be there to cover it, as well as the entire week of competition. Back to you, Megan.
Thank you so much, Virginie. Go inside and get warm. That's Virginie Ann live at Shipyards Park in Whitehorse. About 30 years ago, the alarm bells were ringing over the future of the Southern Lakes caribou in the Yukon. The herd was deemed at risk. There were only a few hundred animals. After decades of recovery, the numbers have grown. Now, there are renewed efforts to teach young people about the Southern Lakes caribou and to reconnect with caribou culture. Cheryl Kawacha brings us the story.
The new program has been years in the making, and now final preparations are underway for a community celebration that will launch the new Caribou in the Schools curriculum. The message is no longer caribou in peril. Instead, a celebration, an emphasis on reconnection, marking the success of the recovery effort. This grade 1 class has been test running the program since the fall.
And they can touch and feel. And so the Caribou in the Schools program, you can tell it was built with so much love, so much partnership with the Indigenous peoples of this area. So it makes me as a teacher feel so great to be supported and to be able to give kids this opportunity.
We're going to migrate a little bit and go to a place that's a little safer for us. So wolves, you can all talk together, see what you want to do about that.
And while these games are clearly geared at young kids, the curriculum has material for every grade from kindergarten to grade 12. It also has specific teachings from the 6 nations in the Yukon Southern Lakes region.
This one opens with words from Shirley Beatty. So each of the nations in the Southern Lakes have their own history and traditions and stories when it comes to Southern Lakes caribou. And it felt important to create 6 different booklets. The main story is the same from a Western science perspective, but as far as the traditional knowledge, each booklet is different and highlights the words and stories of a particular nation and particular elders that took part. And that feels really significant.
We are a circle, all connected.
it really touches them and it lights them up, and they're just amazing. They're just like growing, and I get to see that part of them growing, because that must have been how my Gutchen teacher felt.
We got a lot of wolf. You could use them to do a big harvest, and you could eat them. We are a circle. We are a circle.
And while the community will gather in the days ahead to celebrate, the material is now live on the Southern Lakes Caribou website. Those who created the program hope it's put to good use in the years ahead. Cheryl Kawaja, CBC News, Whitehorse.
Cairns Quest racers are gathering tonight in Labrador for a pre-race banquet, but they may also be thrown a curveball. Organizers say weather may force them to change this year's race course. Weather is one of the many things on competitors' minds ahead of the epic Snowmobile Race. Jeremy Eaton caught up with some of them today and even met a musician who's been inspired by the race.
Like no other race in this world.
We ran out of miles to snowmobile in Saskatchewan and Alberta, so we thought you've got lots more miles to do over here, so here we are. Well, I better get trying this thing before I hit 70, so that's what I'm doing here. Actually, it's a bucket list thing, and before I get too old, I better give it a kick at the cat here, yeah.
Other than wanting to torture themselves, testing your body and mind, testing your mechanical skills, and getting one up on some of your buddies.
Trophy, eh? Yeah, just a trophy. I'm not here for the money.
What keeps you coming back to keep on doing these races?
Well, I haven't won it yet, and it's a bit addicting.
Across the big land, my journey's almost done.
Not concerned with the conditions right now as they are, because I know the ice is from here to Goose Bay is good, and getting to the south coast might be a bit tricky, but there's a trail that we're going to be using. Well, not a groom trail, but we have a path to follow, right?
Optimistic. At the same time, also, I think most riders are probably nervous because there's a lot of concerns going around about the weather conditions all over Labrador. So I think people are a little concerned if we're going to continue, and if we do, how far are we going to go?
This year will be not much snow, but the same conditions, the same will be last year, I think. Yes, every time I race, I'm kind of nervous when I start a race. But this year, I'm kind of more nervous. I'm racing with my son now, you know. I don't want my son to get hurt in the middle of the race.
We're running shorter machines. It might actually work in our favor, but there might be a bit of carnage. I'd say there's going to be a lot of busted up machines this year, but it's part of Cairns Quest.
Keep the throttle down.
We have more Tav Contest videos to show you tonight. Over the last few days, we've been celebrating the language and the entries in this year's contest. Tav host Dodi Malagana started it 4 years ago. She asks for videos of listeners singing, reading, and speaking Inuvialuktun. In the end, everyone learns something while having fun at the same time. Here are more of this year's entries.
In Inuvialuktun, we count in groups of 5. Adauhik, Malarok, Binghut, Yihamat, Dalemak. Dalek is also the word for arm. I just counted all 5 digits on my arm. I chakret. Now we start to add. Dalemat, Malarok, Dalemat, Binahut. Kulinguru Dailak, which means 1 less than 10. Kulit. Now we start to add again. Kulit adauhik, kulit malarok, kulit binahut, kulit hihamat, akimyak. 15. 15 amingmak.
Akana. Good evening, I'm Kakona. I'll be singing Happy Birthday to You in Inuvialuktun.
Aniving ni ublo Kuvyasugludi Aniving ni ublo Kaksi ukpiudi Kaksi ukpiudi Kuvyasugludi Aniving ni ublo Queen Naini, thank you.
And that is Northbeat for tonight. For news anytime, go to cbc.ca/north. Thank you for watching. I'm Megan Roberts. Have a great weekend.
Dalawang 50 sa rin urak luwang ikalawak tungan. Kambak tuwalo lakalawam. Pilagtok talo wama. Mga kalaw yalawak sa mga katan na sibulak pak pilagtok tao wama. Pilagta si malak sa mga gilak tawalawak sa mga magama.
How can any of this be fair?
Now you might think, hey, we just need more doctors, but that's not really it.
A Russian scheme here
shows you where it starts, where it ends.
Were you really willing to risk that job? Yes.
At Thunder Bay's favorite festival, Wake the Giant.
Ta-da! There it is.
Frig off.
What
in the flying friggity frig was that all about?
That was hilarious.
It's just a bit of fun.
Son of a Critch. Watch free on CBC Gem.
My grandfather, Charlie Chaplin, clashed with some very powerful forces in America.
Are you a member of the Communist Party?
I'm Una Chaplin. This is Hollywood Exiles.
News you can trust. Delivered when you want, where you want. On Canada's News app. Download the free CBC News app.
You can be this happy too with endless TV shows, movies, and more.